Hello everyone. Okay, so I'm going to do another one of these art dump videos that I like to do so much. The ones that, at the end of every month I like to put together a video where I look back at all the stuff that I've drawn. So we're doing the July one now. I'm recording this on the 20th. I tend to find that that's the best time to make these videos because I like to know that I can get everything sorted by the end of the month, so this will go out on the last day. And so it does mean that sometimes I end up talking about some of the stuff that I did the month before, technically speaking, but yeah, that doesn't really matter. I won't ramble on too much. I want to keep this one relatively short, hopefully. So we're just going to start. Let's jump right in with this first drawing. This is Bale, and she's one of my alien characters. So I do a lot of these alien characters who are like working as this police force. And yeah, I've done a few designs of Bale, and yeah, I've been a little bit fickle. I quite like this one. I quite like the body. I think that's kind of those are sort of the proportions that I'm going for. The difficult thing is, as she has four arms, it's hard to keep them together. Like they're very kind of bulky as well. She's that kind of she's quite chubby, so it's a little bit hard to fit everything in. And I am finding that I don't really know how her body armor should be designed because it kind of has these two straps that go around her, go over her shoulders. And yeah, so I'm wondering if she needs an extra pair of straps to go around her other pair of arms. Maybe I'll do that. The one thing that I don't think turned out that great is the eyes, and well, basically the face. It's not too bad, but that's not really what this character needs. I think because the reason that her mouth is shaped like that is because I usually draw very dull looking mouths. And I'm just sort of trying to explore different ways of doing it. And I've seen people use this kind of shape. It's sort of like a whale shape when you think about it. If you look at how the mouth, where the teeth are exposed, that's sort of like a whale's body. And you can sort of see how the rest of it looks like the tail, the way it curls up. And there's a little whale tail up there. So that's what I refer it to. I don't know if there is a better name for it, but to me that's a whale shape. And I find that I did all right there because I took some practicing. It's really out of my comfort zone. It's funny. It seems quite simple, but it works for some characters, not all of them. And yeah, the eyes, I put too much reflection in them. I feel like because I don't yet know what kind of eyes she needs. I think her pupils need to be small. I think most of the time she's going to have very small. Because I'm still only just getting into the habit of colouring eyes, so I don't know if that's going to be a thing. There's a lot to think about. I'm really going to have to think about that because I think the last drawing I did was a bit closer to what that character should look like. And this one is Eve. Eve is from another cartoon project that I'm working on with a group of friends. And so she's meant to be like a comedian, and so I try to make her look kind of very excitable and cheery and that kind of thing. And again, it's funny because when I was drawing this, I think it's partly because I'm using a new tablet and I'm still not quite used to it yet. I still need a bit of time to get comfortable with it. And yeah, this I suppose it does project sort of the personality that she has, but I seem to be moving a bit further away from her original design because I think her body's a bit bigger in this one, and I think that I preferred it when I drew her because the first few drawings I did of her, she had a more petite body, and like you can sort of see that here, but yes, she's a bit. Yeah, I think the proportions are kind of off. I mean, because it doesn't immediately look bad, because I think what I am getting better at now is focusing on silhouettes and how the overall shape of the character looks. So yeah, I'm not too bothered about that. But I think as I have these characters that I don't draw very often, but I know a lot about them, and I do feel like I mean, I suppose it's a good thing that I'm experimenting. It's just that when I'm drawing Eve and like these characters that I've sort of established have a specific sort of personality, it feels a bit weird. But I think because I'm just realizing this is a good exercise, like drawing characters that I have kind of settled on as in terms of their design. I've settled on a design for them, and just doing different things. That might actually be a good way of improving and exploring more. Yeah, this one turned out quite well. It's meant to be an interrogation room, so in the background, originally I wanted there to be a mirror there, but that turned into a bit of a headache because obviously you have to create a reflection. You have to make it, in order to make it look like a mirror, you need to show the characters individually being reflected, and it's not a simple matter of duplicating the layer that they are on and inserting it into the mirror space. You need to redraw a lot of it because you're seeing them at a different angle. Like maybe Olba, the blue one sitting over on the left, she would look more or less the same in like the mirror's reflection. But then, I started to realise when I was sort of working that out, you have to tweak all sorts of things, and that's probably something that I need to spend some time learning about. If you have a really big mirror that's reflecting a large part of the room, then there is going to be a lot, because you can get an idea of what this room, the shape of this room, from the wide shot we have here. So the mirror's reflection has to be accurate. I have to, we can't just leave it to the viewer's imagination. Anyway, so the idea here is that the alien cops, they're interrogating Grantha Bolt. That's what I decided to call her. Yeah, she's the one. You can tell which one she is. She's the criminal. So I'm still getting used to her design because when I was using the a reference of a drawing I put up in my previous video, the drawing I did of her, because that is sort of the one that I'm happy with and the one I'm using. But I had to really focus because she has a very different shaped head to a lot of the characters I draw, because I'm getting into the habit of drawing characters where the head kind of gets wider as it goes up, and there's sort of like I don't like drawing hair. That's why a lot of the alien characters do not have hair. So I'm getting used to her design a bit more. I think she looks okay. She looks quite natural. And one mistake I made, because I've changed the uniforms that the cops wear, and they're supposed to have shoulder pads now, and I just forgot to put their shoulder pads on that one. Did I remember it? I may have forgotten to put Bale's. Here's the thing: how many shoulders does Bale have? Because she has 4 arms. I suppose, because her lower arms are not connected to any shoulder. It's a weird thing to kind of to think about anatomy. This is Olba wearing a spacesuit, because I think last year, in fact, you can see the spacesuit that Ema's wearing. If you look over in the background, right up in the top left-hand corner, there's Ema wearing an orange spacesuit, and that was inspired by the spacesuits in Space 1999. And I quite like it. I think that one looks all right. And I'm just experimenting. I haven't settled on what suits they're going to wear when they go into space, when they visit planets that don't have a breathable atmosphere. And the one that Olba's wearing in this new drawing I've done, that's inspired by the Lost in Space Netflix version, the new one that came out recently. I don't know how recent. I don't know a lot about that show, but I was looking at pictures and I found some of those, and that became my reference. Because I like to do it that way, when you're just sort of browsing through pictures on Google Images and you're like, I can make something out of this, and that's a great way of starting. That really gives you a lot of ideas. So the reference is what inspires you to actually start drawing. I find that's usually quite good. this doesn't really make sense because I just sort of lazily put the background in. I shouldn't do the backgrounds afterwards. I've really got to get out of that habit, because the thing is, if you look at the reflection in her helmet, like the part that she's looking out of, what do you call that? Is that the visor? Does that count as the? The way I've drawn put that little reflection in, it kind of looks like she's looking out of a spaceship window. That's basically what that resembles. That little shape that I put on over the glass part of the helmet. The sort of the rounded. Anyway, and it doesn't really make sense with that background because she's not looking at like from inside of. It makes it look like she's inside. She's indoors and she's looking through windows. So yeah, you got to think about those little things. Depending on what sort of environment they're in, there'll be different types of reflections, because a lot of reflections are literally reflecting what's in the room or what's in that area. And this is Chief Rhonda. I don't know how many of my followers remember Rhonda. So I think I drew one picture of her last year and I haven't drawn her since then. So here we are again. And the idea is that she's the chief of this police department, and I've drawn her with a big chunky gun because I'm not the best at drawing guns. I do struggle because that's one of the things. I think drawing things like guns are one of those things where you need to concentrate a lot more. You put a lot more focus into what you're doing than you might assume, because I think for a long time I've just thought, you can just do it intuitively, and that's really not the case. So I looked up guns from like Mass Effect, and just those sort of futuristic guns, the sort of like big machine guns or whatever. I think I like this a little bit more, because the thing is, I had this idea that the police officers in this world, they all have these kind of very specific designs. They have guns and they have rocket launchers and things like that, but they have a bit of a sort of a dorkiness to them. I don't really know how to describe it, and so this design, this is quite threatening. There is something a bit more intimidating about that design, and I'm thinking maybe it doesn't quite fit. Like, it's even a lot darker than the uniform design, the color palette for the uniform. So here we have another drawing. This is Commander Dane, and she doesn't work for the police. She's more of she's part of a different operation, and it's really like a crew of explorers, and the bit like the Enterprise crew, and she's their commander. And when I drew this one, I took the exact same outline of the gun that Chief Rhonda had, and I just tweaked it. It's funny because it looks fairly different now. I've added certain details to it that it didn't have originally, and I sort of went back to looking at the references, the Mass Effect guns and things like that, and it's kind of original. You're not going to find one that looks exactly the same as this, presumably. I think this is kind of original, but it is. I picked up a few details and things because I didn't want to spend all day on this. I think I did that annoying thing on Instagram. When I put this up on Instagram, I was like, here's a little doodle that I did, and I literally only did that because it seems a bit more humble when you're like, oh, I just doodled this. I spent quite a long time on this one. I won't lie. I think I might have. Did I can't remember if the original sketch is in this video. Maybe I've got it coming up. I can't remember. I might have already shown it to you in the previous video. So yeah, it wasn't just a spontaneous thing that I did. But another thing that I really have to get used to is drawing armor. Dane's suit of armor here is not too bad. I'm quite happy with it, but I see a lot of things that need to be improved, a lot of things that could do with fixing. So that's something to think about a bit more. Okay, now here we have. This is an idea I had quite a long time ago, and I must see if I can find the sketch and put it in one of my future videos. I drew a little sketch of Olba kind of looking very stressed, and I just put the word failure above her. And what I was thinking of doing is like it sort of it's like the word is meant to look like it's sort of consuming her, and because the thing about this character is she's so smart that she actually doubts herself quite a lot, and I was sort of thinking I don't know what the best word is to describe her, but she's achieved so much in her life that it's sort of got to the point where she doesn't know where to go from here, and she's feeling a bit lost, and she has a lot of negative thoughts because, like, when you make achievements, it's sort of fleeting. It doesn't necessarily, like for a lot of us, I feel you're not always proud of yourself. You will get to a point where you sort of push that right back in your mind and start being a bit more negative, because I think in order to get as far as she has, she's been very competitive with herself, and she's just sort of in the habit of criticizing herself and having all these negative thoughts. I mean, it's sort of hard to explain. I don't know if there's a better way of. There's probably a better word that sums this all up. But I had a look on an online thesaurus to get all those words. All those fonts are from Blambot. I should probably talk about where I get my fonts. Yeah. And I just went. I don't know if there might be some on that website that you have to pay for, but these were all free. I'm pretty sure when I downloaded these, I didn't have to pay for these ones, because they have quite a lot, and they have they have quite an effect, I find. And so this was pose practice. I use a lot of references from Anastasia Berry, because I just like the way she draws figures and the way she draws poses and things. Because I've really wanted to get better at drawing poses, so I'll try and get at least one of these in each month. Because I do find myself, I think quite a lot of the drawings you've seen in this video I didn't use a lot of references, like not for the poses at least so much. So yeah, that's something that I'm trying to get into the habit of, and so this is a result of me looking at one of Anastasia's one of her sketches, because she has a Patreon. I should probably support it, I think, because I'm getting a lot of use out of her work. So I do need to credit her, because I wouldn't have done this without. I don't know the way I do those eye reflections, because it's probably quite clear what I'm trying to do when I put those individual circles, but that doesn't really work. I don't think. I mean, it does depend on the character, and yeah, I think. I don't know if, because Ema has green eyes here, which seems to make sense because she's green. I don't know if I'm going to stick with that. So yeah, and so that brings us to sketches. Let's talk about sketches. Let's get right into that. So more sketches of Dane's suit, and if you look at the larger drawing, the one on the left, that's the one that I drew, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty much what I need, because that's the kind of shape of the armor that I really wanted for this character, and it's not too difficult. It's not as complicated as it might look. It's just a bunch of shapes. And what's interesting, because like it is just the suit. The reason that I haven't drawn her head is because I thought I'll just draw the suit, and it's funny because drawing pieces of armor turns out to be kind of a good way of drawing a body, basically, because I think it actually ended up looking more natural than the one over there in the background, where I was sort of trying to I use a line of action. Because here's the thing, like I should use more lines of action. They can be very good for nailing poses, but I'm not very good at using them yet. I'm still a bit. I don't really, because every time I draw one, I'm just like, I don't know what to do with that. So when I did that larger one, which doesn't have a head, it sort of got to the point where I was like, this looks more natural than the other, and I ended up putting the hands in. I suppose because she wears gloves. The only part of her body you actually see exposed is her head. So that is really the suit, the entire suit. And yeah, I mean, it's not perfect, and I've got a bit weird because I don't know how it looks all the way around. By the way, I'm learning how to use Blender. Maybe at some point I'll learn how to create character models in Blender, and that would be a good way of settling on designs for things like this, because you'll be able to design the entire thing. And here's Dane with a bit of a goofy expression. And I think I used the previous drawing as a reference, because I'm sort of practicing getting used to drawing her suit. And I think there are things that, let's go back again. I've kind of used a lot of the same proportions. Because one thing I did do is I went back and looked at the very first drawing I drew of Dane, and I realised that the difference between this one and the first one I did is, in the first one, the sort of the breastplate part is quite small. Like, her torso is not that big, and there are bulky parts of her suit, and I think this is where it gets a little bit hard to remember what I need to do to get the shape that I want. Because it's all in the suit. And I'm still going back and looking at the things that inspire this, because once again, the Mass Effect armor is one of the things that inspired this, as well as that character, I can't remember her name, from Wreck-It Ralph. So I tend to go back and look at pictures of those characters and remind myself what it is I'm trying to do, and I'm noticing a lot of things, especially when I look at fan art. Looking at fan art is another good way. Fan art and cosplay, that's a good way of learning how to do costumes like that. Now this character, this is a new guy. His name is Alprus. I think that's what I decided to call him, because I just like to use words that, it's a bit of a random naming system, names that sort of sound otherworldly, and he is actually from the same universe as Dane and Ema and all those alien characters, because he's from like a jungle planet. I've talked about this planet before. There are these sort of cat-like people. He doesn't really look much like a cat, but I quite like this design, because I've already designed a couple of characters who are from this planet. So Alprus is he's a fighter, and he's very competitive, and he's a bit pompous. And here I drew 3 drawings because I kind of knew what I wanted him to look like, but it's funny because my imagination can be very vague, and I think it's only when I start trying to draw things I want to draw that I realise just how vague it is. Because when I started drawing this character, I was like when I drew the first one, I was just what exactly was I? What was the idea I had for this? Because I think I thought a lot more about his backstory and his personality and the stuff that he does, like the stories that I might be telling with these characters, than I did with like his physical appearance. Because I was just like, he's just like a male version of the other 2 that I did. Okay, here you can see the original drawing of Olba in her spacesuit. And originally I was thinking of including the other characters. So the one on the left is Ema, and the one over on the right is Zola. You're going to see a couple more pictures of her coming up. So this was when I only just finished designing the spacesuit, and I had this idea to do like a scene, like a drawing that involved more of a concept, and like these characters going on a mission. And I only got as far as this one because I was very lazy. As it was just a pre-sketch, I thought I'll duplicate the spacesuit because they're meant to look like they're wearing the same suits, and I need to sort of work it out so that even though they have a different body type, that they're wearing the same ones. It's the same design for each of them. But I got really lazy once I'd done this, and I thought Alba looks pretty good. I'm not too keen on how Ema and Zola have come out. So I thought I'd get rid of those two and just focus on finishing up the Alba one, because I'm getting good at just pressing on and finishing stuff. Like I'm trying not to get too embarrassed about the stuff that isn't quite going the way I want it to. So there's more sketches of Zola, because I don't draw my characters from behind quite that much. So when I started this sketch, I drew that one of her from behind. And I think I seem to have been using references. I think that's what I did. I'm pretty sure my drawings don't usually look as good as that when I'm not using a reference. But I do struggle with legs. There's still something that, because the difficult thing about legs is that they're drawn very differently depending on the angle. And that's the same thing with hands. I think the reason why hands and legs can be quite tricky is because they change so much. Like the form will change depending on which way round the character is positioned. And yeah, I think these pictures of Zola look okay. I just, because she does have quite a specific body shape. She's very much an hourglass type, and yeah, I think I need to work on that a bit, because I've done better drawings of her in the past. But yeah, these are just experimental. All of this is just, yeah. Now once again, there's that whale shape smile again, like the way I've drawn her mouth. It's a whale. I quite like this because I think Dane would smile like that because she's that type of character. She's kind of smug, and I like how I've drawn her head so that her eye, one of her eyes, is very distorted because it's further away. That seems to work kind of well, because I think that's another thing that's worth remembering is, especially with cartoon characters, you've got to squish those eyes if they're not supposed to be as close to us. If they're a bit further away, that you've got to do that perspective thing, and that is kind of an exaggeration on perspective, because I've made the further away eye very squished, and it's much narrower than the one that's nearer. I didn't try too hard with the armour on this one. I'm not going to keep the shoulder pads that shape. I think what I need to do is make them more kind of mushroom. I think that's the shape I want for the shoulder pads. And I think because I did a better job with the breastplate, I think that's a bit more in proportion. And obviously I didn't bother doing the whole body. It just ends there. So that's very sketchy, very Grantha Bolt again, and yeah, I quite like, because I think this is more how I want her design to look. Oops, excuse me, because I'm just trying to get used to this character a bit more, and yeah, I mean that is what Grantha looks like. Didn't do a very good job with the gun. I was very lazy with the gun. Again, this is what happens when you don't use references. There is a price to pay. So that's always the thing I need to remind myself. More references. Don't shy away from that. The thing is, though, because I I tend to always use references for objects that I've never drawn before. You've got to do that. That's always the obvious time when you've got to do it. So yeah, if it's something that I have drawn before, I just think, can I draw this from memory? And I suppose that's a good way of practicing. But yeah, I'm always like, because yeah, once again, I think the overall shape isn't too bad, although maybe the end of the barrel is too consistent. I think there should be a bit of inconsistency, especially if it's an alien gun. You got to break the rules when you do alien stuff. Oh, little doggo! This was a really random thing. It's funny how a lot of my best work is when I'm just sort of leisurely drawing stuff. Because yeah, I don't know, because I found that over the past few years, when I draw a character, I do like the pre-sketch where I do a circle for the head and then do the jaw underneath that and whatever. And so this time I just thought, maybe I'll draw the eyes first. And I think I drew the pupils and I made them very close together, because this is something that I picked up from seeing other cartoonists, because I'm always blown away by just how well some cartoonists can draw eyes and just make them look make them really pop. And yeah, so I drew the pupils first, and then I drew those bold lines around them. Yeah, because definitely the lines that go over the top of the eyes, they can always be very bold and heavy, and like the corners tend to be lighter and more of a lightweight to them. Yeah, I just sort of followed on from there and just sort of went wherever it took me. So this wasn't an idea that I had in my head. This all just came out of improvisation. This is a good thing to do when you're practicing, is just start somewhere and just see where it takes you. And I really like how this came out. I think it looks really cute. I'm actually quite pleased with this one. And I have been trying to colour it in, but it is really hard. If you do, because like this is, I thought I can't really do another sketch over this, because this pretty much, there isn't really a pre-sketch here. That is just what I ended up with. And so yeah, I'm not going to try and do a better version over the top of this, because I just think this is as good as it's going to get, really. So I'm thinking of colouring it in, but that seems to be a bit tricky for me somehow. So that's it. That's all you're getting this month. But yeah, thanks very much for watching me talk about my work. I like making these videos because it's always good to review what you've done, and it's interesting to see how each month differs. And yeah, so if you've made it to the end, thanks so much for watching. I'll be back next month with another art dump. Do take care, and I am off to the pub.